Hello friends I made this for. My name is Lauren. And today is a very special day. I have not done a tarot class in a long time. So if you've never been here before, hi, hello, welcome. It's so great to have you in the space. I like to use tarot as a tool of self-reflection. I also like to use it in reference to astrology. And I like to use this channel to talk about the many spiritual things that I feel passionately about. And if you are a returning subscriber, hey bestie, welcome back. I'm super excited to share with you this new tarot class, specifically over the devil. As someone with 6 planets in Capricorn, I like the devil a lot. The devil is, of course, associated with Capricorn. If you've been here for a while, you will have known my other videos on the devil and how it relates back to Capricorn. Today we're talking just about the devil, the archetype of the devil, what it can represent, what in the past it has represented, and how we can move beyond that into even deeper, more meaningful interpretation that can be supportive when we pull this card, rather than a like, oh no, which is usually the case. And as you well know, if you've been here before, I like to encourage folks to not look at any cards as being positive or negative, but simply experiences. And why I want to focus on the devil today is because the devil has been coming up a lot for me. And I think a lot of us can see the devil coming out to play, as it were, in the world around us. Because the devil as an archetype, rather than a figurehead, has a lot to teach us. And I think we can see the devil being played out constantly within our lives, but also in the face of the current climate. I think a lot of us are seeing very black and white thinking. And this black and white thinking sometimes comes from a very religious place. For those of you who don't know, I was raised in Texas and grew up in a mega church, and specifically a Baptist church. So this might seem very strange to you, but I think because of my religious upbringing, I find even more power in the tarot when there is a visualization that brings me back to my biblical roots and really pushes me to explore my understanding of my past faith with a little bit of a different perspective. So today I want to talk about the devil card, but I would love to hear your reflections as well down in the comments below. What deck are you using? I encourage you, as you are watching this video, to pull out your devil card and perhaps even journal. Pause the video at any point, journal with your devil card, explore what comes up for you as I talk about this subject, again, as an archetype, not as an actual person. Because for me, in my belief system as it is now, the devil is more of a fluid concept than a very strict experience. And to explore the devil card with you today, I'll be using the Smith-Waite deck, the Tarot of the Whole Spectrum, this one, and a really interesting deck that I have procured from a thrift store, the Fantastical Creatures Tarot, which actually uses some really interesting illustrations to depict the tarot and explore. But I want us to start with the most classical interpretation. Usually that's the case for me. I feel like when we look at the oldest version, we can definitely see where the newer incarnations of this language can be deciphered. So let's start at the oldest that I have, and that is this interpretation of the devil card. So what I really love about this interpretation of the devil card is, one, we see these two figures that are very reminiscent of the Lovers old interpretation from the same deck being very much Adam and Eve-esque. And I love that interpretation because it, to me and my religious upbringing, reminds me very much of this idea that once Adam and Eve ate from the forbidden fruit, the tree of knowledge, they became aware of their nakedness, aware of shame. And this is almost them once they left the garden. So why do I say that? Because they became aware of their shame. They became aware of their nakedness. Well, we have these two figures, which now have tails, which is super cute, are chained to a pillar upon which the devil sits. And what I find interesting is the devil has one hand down and one hand up, which again, we see reminiscent of the magician. So a messenger of sorts, a harbinger of sorts. And so if we think about the story of Adam and Eve, we can think back to this concept of how once they became aware of their nakedness, aware of their shame, they hid. They hid from God because they were ashamed. And in this illustration, I think of the chains as being their shame. What they became aware of became their constricting factor. It became the doubt. It became the emotions that harbor our self-doubt, our ability to now feel that we are not good enough, that we are not doing what's right. We have to shift who we are and how people see us, so people including God, so that we do not perpetuate certain shames that we became aware of. And I bring that up because that is what I want to focus on here, is what ties us down. Now, in old classic thoughts around this card in the tarot, it's often attributed to addiction, obsession, and being tied down to specifically substances or being on your phone too much. And though that can be the case, I encourage you, again, everything is optional, it's as you choose, to see a little bit beyond even just that, because that can be a very limiting perception of this card. In fact, yes, completely, those things can tie us down and limit us, because addiction is indeed the devil. It keeps us captive to something that we must have, correct? That is not something to say that's not the devil at all. The devil can be that, and the devil can be that and others. And that's really what I want to explore with you today, is when we think about the story of Adam and Eve. And of course, if you didn't grow up in the church, no worries. You don't have to have had a Christian background or growing up in the church to understand the concept that is given in this early story of the Bible. Is very simple. Before we were naked, we were in the garden with the animals, all was right, all was well, and then suddenly awareness became overwhelming. So with this story in mind, addiction can certainly be our chains that bind us, but let's try and shift even beyond that. And to do so, I want to pull out the next devil card from the Holy Spectrum Tarot. Here we see a person with glasses on, super green, and surrounded by words. So some of the words are, I can't, why even try? You're not enough, I have to, fear of change. Those are all in green around with the glasses. So one invitation here, and of course there's even more there, no one cares, I'm worthless, like phrases like that. So how are these phrases the devil? Well, what this incarnation of the devil is inviting us to observe is how our own thoughts keep us captive. Sometimes it's not even things outside of ourselves, such as looking at our phone too much or being addicted to a substance. These things are very real and very much control us at times, or can control us at times. But what this is inviting us to observe is that how we view ourselves can be the very chains that bind us. It can be the thoughts that we have around the world and our ability to do certain things. One thing that might be the devil for us is just very limited concepts of people, not even just ourselves. But one devil concept to me would be, I think that all Christians are evil and hateful. That's a limiting belief that blocks us from having conversations with folks, yeah? Not to discount that perhaps you had a bad interaction, but just as it is the devil for someone to say you are sin because of how you live, and how you live is counter to my belief system, it would be just the same to say your belief system is counter to who I am, and therefore you are the devil and everyone like you is the devil, right? Or everyone like you is evil. That is a limiting belief that cuts us off from connection. And I share that because 40% of queer folks actually identify as being Christian. So saying that becomes the limiting belief. It becomes the bind, the chains. So saying I can't or you can't, projecting that back or forth, whether it's on ourselves or on others, is where we create a limiting belief system. Now, this is not to say, like, for example, if you are a person of color and you say, if I'm in a crowd of white people, I don't necessarily feel safe. There are certain things that keep us safe versus keep us separated. And I want to acknowledge that we have to do what feels safe for us, right? But at all levels, it's also important to acknowledge, where are we being restrictive with our thinking? Where are we limiting ourselves? Where are we limiting others? Where are we limiting things rather than building off of what we know? And of course, the problem with the devil as it says, is the brain is constantly trying to keep us safe, right? And that's something that Lindsay Mack teaches, and I want to really harp on here. The brain is constantly trying to keep us safe, but sometimes the brain is trying to keep us safe by believing certain things that are not actually supporting us. So for example, that might be, I can't do this thing because I'm just not talented enough. The brain in that situation might be trying to keep you safe from rejection and having people question you or what you're doing, but the brain is also limiting you from a human experience, and that might be trying something or making something and possibly failing. Yeah? The way the devil works in the brain, as it's illustrated here, is sometimes that safety measure becomes the limiting belief where we're not able to make meaningful connections or live a really fulfilling life because we're afraid. And that can sometimes be seen as our inner parent. The inner devil is, in fact, the inner parent, y'all. Not all the time, but enough to make us go, hey, maybe I can parent myself a little differently. Maybe I can just say something a little different to my brain, right? Maybe I don't have to look at this situation exactly that way. Again, there's something really powerful and beautiful about our brains trying to keep us alive. That's the most important thing, right? Keeping us safe, keeping us alive. But how can we love that part of ourselves and also acknowledge, you know what, brain, you're really trying to keep me safe, but me making a mess in the paint is not necessarily going to harm me. So on that note, how do we break the chains? Going back to this image, we see the chains present. And what I really love about the Fantastical Creatures Tarot is that there's not a death card. There's not a death card in this deck. There's a chains card. And that is really, really powerful. So the chains card is the space holder for death. And what we are seeing here, and this is something that I'm brand new to, is the Fenris wolf, I think is how it's pronounced. It's a Norse mythological character. This is one of the monstrous trickster children of Loki. And this was a powerful wolf that constantly escaped their chains, and so it was eventually put on an island chained to a rock where it will stay until the end of the world. And I find it really interesting that death is renamed chains in this deck, because it very much is about the chains and escaping our chains, acknowledging the chains that hold us down, our limiting beliefs about ourselves, others, or our ability to make change in the world, because there are very physical limitations, yeah? We are in a world of physical limitations. You can't just manifest $1 million out of nothing. You have to work or do certain things, but not everyone will just automatically do that, even with all the hard work in the world. There is so much at play in our physical world that keeps us limited and small. So this card and this character, this fantastical creature, is here to remind us of how can we get out of the chains? How can we release these limiting beliefs so that we can fulfill our most magical shit? How can we fulfill our most magical shit? So that's what this is all about. Can we take the very chains that hold us down, whether that be addiction, whether that be sense of self, how we view others and our situations? Again, not to say that there are not very real limits in our physical world, but how do we view those structures and how can we view them differently, yeah? How can we melt down these chains into the tools of our liberation? And that's why I really like this image. We see the wolf, and in its mouth is a sword or a dagger as a tool of liberation. We are in the cold. We are cast out of Eden. Yeah. We have been released and we cannot go back. But we don't have to be limited by our shame. We don't have to be limited by how others view us or how we view ourselves or how we view others, how we feel like we have to move through the world. How can we take these same constraints that the devil has put on us and use them as our tools of not only just saving ourselves, but saving others. I share a lot that I'm an art ritual facilitator, and that is because I used to have a very limiting belief around art as anything. And as I relearned my connection to art, I melted down those chains that said it has to look this way, it has to make money, it has to do this, it has to do that, and said, no, I use art as a liberation for myself. And now that I have that tool, I can use it to liberate others. And that's something that I personally do in the work that I do and what I feel passionately about. How do I make that space for others? How do I use the tools that were once limiting beliefs that I believed that held me captive as a tool to liberate myself and others? And again, that can look like addiction. That can look like so many things. I'm going to put all these up as an illustration of what the devil can look like, yeah? These are the many incarnations of the devil, whether it's how we think, it's how we feel, or how we liberate ourselves from the dark depths of the obsession, the illusion, right? These are illusions. Adam and Eve were always naked, but awareness made them small. Fear made them small, and they were cast out. And so as we are in the world, or as we are moving through it, how do we liberate ourselves? Do we liberate ourselves from the concept of sin? What is sin? What is sin to each of us, right? Again, this is not to say you need to have been to church for 1,000,000 Sundays to know what this means. But for me personally, I don't believe in sin because I found it to be a arbitrary concept that could be used to manipulate folks and to restrict folks in their ability to be themselves and their truth. So that's where I am. That's some of the chains that I melted down for my personal liberation. How about you? What is coming up for you in the devil card? What chains are you kind of melting down to use for your liberation, but also collective liberation? How do we collectively come together to erase these illusions, or not even erase, because we can't erase suffering. We cannot erase fear or shame, but we can move through it differently. We don't have to be stuck in these feelings that keep us captive. How can we move through them with much more ease, love, and grace? I hope that was supportive for you. Again, let me know down below. What cards are you pulling? What cards did you work with for the devil? What's the deck that you're pulling out? And as far as a journaling prompt, I invite you to sit with your devil card and ask, what are the chains that are binding me, that are no longer serving me? What are the restrictions that are no longer serving? Because as a Capricorn and a very Saturnian person, I deeply believe that some limits are here to teach us, and they are tools that we can work with. But what are the limits that are just not serving us, right? So with that said, friends, make sure to like, comment, subscribe once again. If you enjoyed this video, share it with a friend, an enemy, someone that you lust after, love, or just feel neutral about, whatever it is. Share this video. Make sure to ring the bell so that you can get notified whenever I'm posting another friendly video. And as always, friends, if you want to join me on Discord, Patreon, Instagram, all those places, make sure to check out the links in my link tree down below. Click on any of these videos that have popped up around my head to see more, whether it's whatever, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.